Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Dave Peltz, and along with me, as always, my partner in crime is Dr. Joe Hamlett. How are you doing there, Dr. Joe?
I'm doing good, Dr. Dave. It sounds like you got a lot of energy, which I
Uh,
do too. We've probably both had coffee, so we're probably over the top right now, but I'm
yeah,
doing
yeah,
good.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Joe and I like our cup of Joes or Javas or well, yeah, whatever works, right? So
Right.
again, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. This week's topic is called being curious. Now I know for those of you who are cat lovers, the first thing that comes into mind is the meow, kitty cat being curious and stuff like that, and that's fine, but that's not really where we're going today. Where we're going is, what does being curious really mean? What are we talking about when you say be curious, or being curious from a personal development and professional development perspective? And so with that, Joe, we are not talking about cats and kittens. So what do you think about when you hear being curious?
Well, Dave, so I'm not gonna talk about cats or kittens, but I would like us to maybe picture when we were younger. How curious we were at those
Like
stages.
yesterday younger or
No, I'm talking
uh
way younger, before you could drive, younger, before you
okay.
could
Well,
typically
I
do a
still can't
lot of
drive,
things
but
for yourself, younger. But I really, like us to kind of just think about when we were very young, and being curious about just about everything. I know I had, with our three kids, a lot of mishaps because they were being a little curious. So that's why I want us to kind of put our mindset into thinking about the unknown, things we're not familiar with, just things we may think we know about, but not necessarily know about. So just keeping that in as our theme of being curious. So when we think in terms of, again, you refer to those younger kids that are trying things, taking forks and sticking them in 120-volt sockets and finding out the results there. So, those types of things, but not to the detriment where you injure yourself or you hurt yourself, but keeping that mindset open to the possibilities, which we said on previous episodes. That's what it's about. Just being curious to the things you don't know about, not coming into a project or a team and just immediately being closed off, but being curious about your peers, about your colleagues, their thoughts, their perspectives. That is a good way of looking at things. And I can almost guarantee if you go into it with that being curious mindset, you're going to learn a lot of things because you're going to be open to, again, other people's perspectives, other people's values, their views, because you're really wanting to know what they have to say, what they have gone through, what they've, created, what they've done. You really want to know. And so I've really took that to heart in my own experiences in, personal life and professional life. When I meet, as a matter of fact, just a couple of days ago, I was talking to some, new people at our company, and just really being curious about where they came from, what they like to do, with their time at this organization, just those types of things, which gives me a better understanding of how I can assist them, how I can help them. And so that's what I think of in terms of being curious as far as on the professional, just being open to the possibilities. And we think on the personal side, being curious about, where I am today and where I'd like to go tomorrow. So me and Dave talked, right before this episode, we were just talking about the possibilities of the podcast and other things, in business and just those types of things. And so I really like the idea that we're being curious about what's next. What are we going to apply? How we're going to apply our skills to help others, to help each other. So it just, you get into that being curious mindset, and you really just start to, ping back and forth. Oh, wow, I could do that. I could possibly do this. And that's what I get excited about. I mean, kind of telling my voice right now that it just sparks energy in you again to think about, what could be. And so
Yeah.
that's what I think about when I think about being curious. So I'll stop there and let you
Yeah,
jump in,
that's
Dave.
awesome, Joe. There's a lot to unpack there, and I like it a lot because it can go so many different ways. I mean, when you first started off, I didn't almost, I did. I went back to my younger days and how everything seemed new, and I was interested in it. And what does that do? How does that work? What do I
Right.
need to do this or play that or go there? What can be found? What can be seen, observed, and learned? And that natural inherent curiosity that we have as human beings to and just that inherent desire to be curious and to learn and
Yep.
become exposed to these things and taking it through a child's eyes, if you will, just that newness, that it, just where little things just blow your mind and you're just like, wow, that is amazing, and that's where my mind goes, is how can I change my mindset to be that open and accepting of things instead of as more mature adults, not that I'm that mature, but a mature adult saying, well, I already know enough about that, I've
Right.
already
Right.
lived that. Well, what if we
Yep.
put that attitude on pause and put on the glasses of a younger person, and their curiosity to and desire to be exposed to new things. And that's what I try to do when I think about being curious. And I try to do this. I don't want to say every day as much as I would love to, but when I'm going through new situations or trying to figure out something, I try to put on that perspective or use that perspective or that lens to say, if I approach it without my knowledge, what will I see that my knowledge is filtering, if that makes
Right.
sense?
Right.
Because we do have a lot of experience in education, and we've done a lot of different things in a lot of different industries, and we bring in these biases and prejudices, inherent ones, not the illegal ones or anything like that. That's not where we're going, but just you know what we like to do and what we don't like to do. And if we take off all that we've learned and just go into with a completely open mind, what did I miss? Which door didn't I open that I could look at
Right.
differently?
Well, Dave, you brought up a very important point when we think about being curious. You talked about biases, and I think that is one that will occur if we, choose to stay rigid and really focus on the things that we know and what we learned in the past. Then we don't open ourselves up to, being curious. And, like the example I provided before, if I meet some new people and I just make assumptions about them or have this preconceived bias or unconscious bias about
Mm-hmm.
them, then I'm going to be it's going to be difficult for me to maybe expand what I
Mm-hmm.
thought or, be willing to hear a new perspective or a new idea. So I think that's what happens when you don't, or you choose not to be curious. You've already kind of formed that
You've already made up
idea
your
of
mind.
something
Yeah.
else, and you choose not to, see any other way, and so you've limited yourself and your ability to see where that takes you. And you said it before, just, we may have already learned something about it in this regard, but you may learn something different if we take a different approach or a different look at it, or be curious about, okay, I've already seen this part of it. What can it show me on the other side? And I
Yeah.
think that's, you limit yourself if you don't have that curiosity. If you just assume, again, for face value, that what that person or that thing brings to the table, that then you're not going to have that ability to garnish more or gather more information or learning. And I think that's critical if we think about, and we've talked about this before too, being a lifelong learner.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not curious, then it's going to be very difficult for you to continue to learn and continue to grow.
Yeah.
That's how we are going to, to get introduced to new things. Is the idea that we're going to go into it with the mindset that I want to know about this. I am curious about this or
Mm-hmm.
that, or again, I want to see it through a different lens. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, we may have seen it once before, but that's not the only way. And we talk about that all the time, even with our journeys.
Yeah.
We all have our journeys. Me and Dave may see the exact same thing in the same room at the exact time, but we walk away with different opinions
Absolutely.
of it or perspectives of it. And that's what it's all about. His version of it maybe different than mine. And of course, mine is going to be absolutely correct and Dave's is going to be incorrect,
Well,
but
that's just the way
that's
it
beside
is.
the point. But that's the whole idea, is that we be curious enough to accept that, okay, I saw it one way, Dave saw it a different way, and that's okay, that's
Yeah,
acceptable. But the idea again is that I don't now take it, we both saw the same thing, and I just stand tall that, okay, my way of now seeing it is the only way. And so again, even if I go into it being curious but then change at the end of it, now I have this data and I'm going to,
yeah,
convert it to my way of thinking, or my way is the only way or the best way,
right.
then I've defeated the purpose.
Yeah, and I like where you took the conversation, because it reminds me of you know, developing training, and oh, it has to be done absolutely this way. It can't be done
Right,
any
right.
other way. And it's like, well, that's not necessarily true. There's so many different ways to do things and
Yeah,
still get a positive result that's equal to or better than the way that we might be currently doing it. And that's that
right,
curiosity piece. That's that, if we talk about from a professional perspective and organizational perspective, that's, well, we're doing it this way, period. And it's like, but what if we explored or tried it a little
right.
bit
Yeah,
differently? What if we did it
yeah.
this way? It's still within our guidelines. We're still in the sandbox. And, that conversation can go one of a couple ways. Oh, we've already tried that. It didn't work. Or, okay, let's try it. And if it's we tried that, it already worked, it didn't work. My question is, when did you try it? How long, why did you try it? What were the circumstances? Because if it's been any period of time, it could be different. We could have progressed, believe it or not.
Right, right,
Technology advances itself, or, well, we advance it. So what was new and cool in the 1980s and 90s with video games is completely different than what's cool and up and
right,
coming with
right,
video games now. So just because we do things one way doesn't mean we should not be curious. We absolutely should be curious on how to do things differently. And that's that continuous process improvement piece that we bring up once in a while. And it's really about that perspective too. When people hear our story and how we met each other, and how we grew up together and went to grade school and high school. That's not true, folks. We didn't do that. We're like twin brothers from other mothers. So, it's that perspective that you and I deliberately bring, and that we always challenge each other offline. What about this perspective? What about that perspective? Have you
right,
thought about this? Have you thought about that? That won't work because of this. Or it will work this way. And these are the types of deep discussions that Joe and I have offline when we talk about being curious. Is we challenge our perspectives, because Joe brings his experience and I bring my experience, and
right,
we try to understand how they mesh together and how they don't mesh. Because that's when you understand how things mesh, that's kind of the easy part. It's understanding why they don't mesh, and how can we structure them and build them so they do mesh. That's the cool piece, because now
right.
you're really thinking and contemplating and being curious.
Absolutely, that's building on that curiosity. Yeah, because like you say, it's established. Even your example where you tried something before, and it didn't work. Well, the curiosity, being curious, you might say, well, okay, we tried this, but let's add this to it. Let's
Yeah,
change that. Again, going back to when you talked about having a team and somebody brings something to the table, that all goes back to when we're developing teams or we're on a team, we're all considering everyone's point of view, that
right.
diversity of thought, that is
Yeah, that
again, that is
diversity of
so
thought, absolutely.
powerful, because again, me and Dave are a lot in a lot of ways, but it's our differences that make us stronger, because like Dave just said, we some things mesh, align perfectly, but then other things don't. And sort of the challenge is to trying to see how we can take those differences and align them to where we both win, where the team wins. And that's the being curious part, because again, if I stay rigid and say, well, my way or the highway, then we lost that opportunity to explore and see what
Yeah.
else could come from those differences. And so I think that's where a lot of teams struggle these days, is that they don't really embrace that diversity of thought. They don't
Mhm.
really incorporate all
And,
aspects of that team
and a lot of that
dynamic.
comes back to change. And I don't want to redirect the conversation too much, but that's really what a lot of that comes down to, is trust and change. And people, some people are challenged by trusting their employees, trusting their leadership. Some of them are challenged by just the fact that it's someone else and not them, and that's
Well,
okay. But to our point, when Joe and I challenge each other offline and online sometimes, we do it out of curiosity, not to
right,
say I'm
right,
right or you're wrong, or it's my way or the highway. It's it's how can we better understand this, because there's
right,
always a way that things can fit together. It's just how. Some of them
right,
are much more complex and we don't have the answers for. Some of it, it's a little bit of work and we can get it to do what we need it to do. And again, there's more than one way to accomplish something. And having that diversity of thought, like Joe said, is imperative. Otherwise, you stagnate,
right,
and whatever you're doing is status quo, and that's really not what we want our conversation to be. When we talk about the journeys of not so ordinary people, a lot of what we talk about is because we haven't taken that ordinary path. It's the not so ordinary
right,
journey that leads us to these different discussions and these rich discussions that provide the levels of insight that we're trying to reach. And even if it's just a spark to get you curious about something, then we've done what we just said. Be
right.
curious.
Yep. That's what it's about. It is, again, if you're going to have that open mindset, it does begin with curiosity, because
Mm-hmm.
you're curious about what you don't know. You're curious about the unknown. You're
Mm-hmm.
curious about where it's going to take you, where it's going to lead you. And
Mm-hmm.
so in me, and like Dave just said, that spark is there, that, that excitement about what is this, how does this turn out, how does it end, almost like, waiting on that last episode of that series you've been watching for 7 years, that curiosity of how are they going to take, where are they going to take this, and that's the curiosity that brings you back for every episode,
Yeah.
is what are they going to do next. And I think if we approach, things with that type of mindset, I think you'll always be surprised by the outcome, or you may have already predicted it, but just the idea, if you that you were open to, it could be something different.
Yeah.
I think, again, that's the important thing, because I think, again, I think back, as a child, you think of, I want to be this, I want to be that, and then someone comes and says, no, you can't do that, and then that just deflates you, or
Yeah.
just, now you think of, okay, what about this, and you keep getting beat up, and eventually you stop
You
being
stop asking.
curious, you
Yeah.
don't care, and going back to kind of what Dave said, getting complacent, because you don't think there's going to be anything different, and so, again, that's a um, not a good place or an outlook to have, that you can predict tomorrow is going to be the exact same thing, and that's why I say I get so excited about not knowing what it's going to be tomorrow, but
Yeah.
being open to, if it gets presented to me, how do I respond to it? Do I accept it? Do I continue to be curious about it? Or do I say, okay, I've seen enough, that's it? And it goes back to what we said before. You still have uh, the decision. It's your decision still to choose whether you accept it, whether you discard it, whether you continue to pursue it. I mean, that's still your choice. But I think not giving yourself that choice is a huge detriment to your growth, your development.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking of a couple of other analogies. And, to me, I also think about it as I look at like pro athletes or entertainers. They've done their sport, they've done their craft, whether it's music or acting, and then they're curious as to, well, what's next? What else is out there?
Right.
Well,
Yep.
some athletes become coaches, and some actors and musicians become directors,
Right.
uh, or yeah, we'll just leave it at that. I mean, it's that's that curiosity. What's next? What else is out there? What else can I do? Some people go into philanthropy, and some people invest in science and engineering programs, and it's just amazing when you think of, well, what's next, and you keep that curiosity, or if you've lost that curiosity, to refine and rekindle that curiosity.
Right.
How many more possibilities? Because the other day I was thinking, well, I've been there and done that. Most of the things on my bucket list are done. Now what? Well, that's
Right.
just it.
Yep.
Now what? If I take off my glasses and I put on a different pair, maybe I'll see something different, or a
Yeah.
different color, or focus in on something else. There's always that curiosity on what else could we do? What can we try? That's how we got to the moon. That's how we got,
I was I was
aircraft
just
in the skies. That's how
I
we
was
got
just
cars
gonna
on the
say
road.
that we don't have any there are no advancements in technology if we don't
Or
remain
even
curious.
society. Think
Right,
about society.
because again, if we continue to do things the same way over and over again, we're going to get the same results.
That's right.
But it's not until we think outside that box we start to be curious about, okay, what if we change this? Just if
A
it's a
little
circuit,
bit. Yeah.
yeah, if we don't connect it to terminal A but connect it to terminal B, what does that do? Oh, that zaps me. Okay, I'll put it back on A. But that's how we learn and
You've mentioned a lot
develop.
about being zapped by electricity, Joe. I'm picking up on a pattern here.
Of course, we again, many of us had to learn. We were curious, so we
Yeah.
wanted to figure out what that did, and
We
we
couldn't just
did.
learn from others. We had to learn the hard way.
Right. But again, it's again, we don't want it to be to a detriment, especially for our kids. We were putting up those safeguards and plugging sockets and all that kind of stuff because we experienced that. So yeah, we want to learn from our mistakes, and that's how we make improvements. And if you're in manufacturing or any type of environment, we're always talking about streamlining the process, or you know eliminating or minimizing excess and clutter and all those things. That's what it's about. You got those tried and true methods, but there's probably still room for you to improve them, to make them better, or to take some steps out because they're not needed anymore. You said that earlier. Just things change, technologies change. So now, can we incorporate some of that new technology into those
Well,
old
and to your point,
processes?
Joe, you said something that I loved it, and that was, we've got our process and we've got it narrowed down and dialed in so much that we got exactly what we want. But then how do you improve it? If you're that dialed in and there's no waste and there's no room for growth, are you too dialed in? I mean, maybe it's very efficient and profitable, but how do you get to the next level in your market? Because after some point, that beta tape or that CD disc is going to become obsolete. What's
Right.
next? You
Yep.
might have perfected it, blockbuster, but then what?
Yep.
So what else is next? What is after that you have to be curious about to add back in
Yep.
to get a different result that'll take
So
you
that
down a
you
completely
continue
different path.
exactly.
Maybe you chase rabbits for a while, but then you come up with a completely new
Right.
product
But you're right. It's
service.
those organizations, people that get there, and they're like Rocky. They're up at the top of the stairs and jumping up and down with their hands raised, and I'm there. I'm done, and that's not the case,
Yeah.
because people that are watching you are looking at, okay, I'm gonna knock them off, and the way I knock them off is I see their process. I've observed how they got there. Now I'm gonna improve upon it. I'm going to change it. And you mentioned sports. That's a perfect example of. And big in basketball, so I've been watching since the '70s.
Is that the one with the little white ball that you hit with the bat?
Yeah, we're not going to go down the path of trying to explain sports to Dave, right? But just that, if you look at the '70s, some of the limitations that were on the players and their ability to do things, and then over the years you're watching these players do amazing things. I just like thinking about the dunk contest. That was
Yeah.
one of my favorite things. The dunks back in the '70s and early '80s back then were amazing. Now you watch some of these young players and they're almost doing somersaults and all these
Aerial
types of things.
acrobatics. You wonder
Yeah,
where the
because
wires are.
they were curious. They were
Yeah.
in there, out there, in their backyard in the gym, and saying, okay, what if I try doing this? What if I throw it off the backboard? What if I throw it behind my back? What if and that's how they were able to improve and make it better, is because they were curious about, okay, can I do this? Will I be able to achieve this?
Yeah.
And that's what curiosity does for us. It
And I think
allows us
another
to.
great example of that is surfboarding transitioning into skateboarding.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That whole, how can we take advantage of learning when the weather doesn't permit or the waves don't permit? And
Right.
that created an entirely new industry. And
Yeah.
that to me was just so cool when I learned that yesterday. Not yesterday, it was the day before,
Well, I was going to say we're
but
really showed our age when we start to talk about those type things, but that's again the beauty of that curiosity is being able to improve upon something that was already existing or
Mhm.
creating something totally new or different that spun from something that was already fundamentally there,
Right.
but we just changed it to now it doesn't look like that thing it used to be.
Yeah.
But that's so again we just encourage you just to go into things with that curiosity. Like I said,
Yeah.
we don't grow, we don't develop, we don't continuously learn unless we have that mindset of I want to know. I again, I may have already experienced this, but is there something I'm missing? And you
Right.
said it earlier, Dave, putting on just a different pair of lenses to look at it. Because again, we may have been looking through our glasses that help us see far away, but what about those things right in front of us that
Yeah.
we may have bypassed, overlooked in the past?
And you and I have been talking a lot about things and jobs, and you did touch upon this earlier, and I want us to circle back to that. And that's the people side of things.
Right,
Socially, we know the last few years have just been absolute nuts, and there's still, I'm just going to say from my perspective, stupid things happening out there. And I believe that if we put on, look at things from a different perspective, there will be a lot, and through the lens of curiosity, there is a huge opportunity for us to learn and make things better, within our
right,
organizations, within ourselves, within our peer groups, socially, economically. I mean, that curiosity goes a long, long ways. And like we've been saying this whole episode, curiosity is progress. Whether it's a good outcome or bad outcome, it's still progress, and you're still
right,
learning what to do, what not to do. Don't touch the hot stove, Dave.
right.
Psst,
Yep,
that burns. How many more times is Dave going to do that? Hopefully not many more. There's only 10
right,
digits. So, it's that curiosity to always be open to something new, and that curiosity to explore what does that look like? Not just the front end, but the back end and the sides and the tops and the bottoms, what else is there that we can look at? What else can we see that we're not seeing? We could liken it even to the light spectrum, unless you put on a certain lens, you're not going to see something. It's going to be filtered
right.
out.
Yep,
So, it's that curiosity has always fueled me. And when I've found myself kind of like stuck, I always think about, well, what else could I do? What else could I do differently? How else could I approach this? Who else could I talk to learn something
right.
new?
Yep,
Or consider a different angle, or what am I not seeing that other people are seeing? How can I see what they're seeing? And just those different perspectives, cultural, whether it's cultural or gender related or whatever, that doesn't matter. It's just those different perspectives. And you and I being, military veterans, that's a different perspective. And that
right,
gives us a different insight. The flip side of that is if we hadn't gone into the military, we would have a completely different perspective
right.
potentially, or at least a
Absolutely.
different perspective. So
Right,
that curiosity drives Joe and I to really ask the questions, who, what, where, when, why, how come,
right.
why is
Yep,
that happening? Why is it not happening? What can we do to make it better? Should we make it better? Should we leave it alone for a while? Should we stop doing something and just completely start over because we've hit a dead end? Let's start over and think of things completely different and go down a different path than we did. Let's turn left instead of right and see where that left takes us.
right,
And that's what we want to stress is, being open to all the possibilities and challenge yourself to explore those possibilities. Be curious, learn something new. Even if it doesn't interest you, try it. You might be
right.
surprised.
Yep,
There's different activities and hobbies that are out there. People, I've talked to friends and colleagues are like, I'm just bored. I've already done that. And, like, well, what else can you do? Who knows? Try, think
right.
about it, be curious.
Well, I think again, even having that curiosity and being open to those things, I think another important piece of that is just not to, you know, check it or try it, experience it, and then immediately discount it. I think that just remaining open to again maybe and we've talked about this before, maybe stash it in your toolbox, your mental toolbox, or something that you can go back to. I think that's very important. That again, and that comes back to that critical self evaluation. Just always, taking stock of what you've learned, what you've
Mhm.
acquired, what you have in your possession, that you can later tap into.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge discount or disconnect that we see when people are taking a look at other people or evaluating people for maybe for promotions or
Mhm.
moving them to another position, that they really discount some of those things that people bring to the table.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
allow
They
them
already
to,
have they've already figured them out. They've
uh,
already got their
again,
perspective, and that's what they're sticking to.
absolutely. And again, that's where I was going, that they have not been curious about, okay, so let me hear about those experiences that you've had, or let me learn more
Why does
about
this
those
work for you
experiences.
but not for me, or why does this work for me and not for you? And
Right.
yeah, that's absolutely spot on, Joe. We've got about a minute left. What final thoughts do you have that you'd like to share?
Yeah, like I said, I'll go back to where I started this. Again, just thinking in terms of being that young child that's being curious about the world, about the
Mhm.
new surroundings, about things that they don't know about. I just encourage you not to just every day you walk out starry eyed, like looking up, hey, what's up at the in the stars, or what can I get there? Just really being curious though about things you don't know, you don't understand, and really trying to learn those things and understand those things. I think if you really seek to do that, more frequently, more regularly, I think you'll be amazed at the things you learn, and that you start to appreciate, and the things that you'll start to, embrace and understand. It goes back to what I said earlier about the diversity of thought.
Mhm.
You can't gain that true respect for that or understanding of that if we limit ourselves to hearing from other people or seeing what other people are doing or really experiencing, some of these things that people are talking about. You have to really remain curious about the world around you. So
Mhm.
I'll leave it at that.
Very well said, Joe. I'm going to add one thing, and that is be excited about your curiosity. You know, if you find yourself stuck in a place or a job or a relationship or whatever, go someplace else, try something else,
Right.
play with it to see if you like it. And if you do, then maybe that's your new path.
Right.
So with that, we'd like to thank Joe and I like to thank all of our viewers and listeners for joining us for another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. If you liked it or enjoyed any of our episodes or this one, or thought that we were just absolutely hilarious, which would be awesome because we're one of our dreams is to be comedians someday. Give us a like, give us a share. This is our format for right now. So until next time, we want you to keep on being your not so ordinary you.